Hi friends, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. This is Homeschool at Heart. My name is Leah, and today we're going to be talking about how to homeschool if you, the mom, are an introvert. All right, guys, I am a big old introvert. If you know me in my real life, you know that I have to sometimes take myself away from situations so that I can have introvert time and kind of recharge my batteries, and that is a huge consideration for deciding whether or not to homeschool or whether to continue to homeschool, because sometimes as an introvert, your mental health depends on getting that alone time. And can you do this while maintaining your own sanity? And my short answer for you is yes, of course you can do it. I have some tips for you, but let's talk about what does it mean to be an introvert, because maybe some people don't know. But being an introvert means that you need time to quote unquote recharge your batteries after being around a lot of people. You need that quiet time, and that is what energizes you. Whereas an extrovert would thrive on social interaction. An ambivert can go either way. Usually they have one or the other that is their preferred their preference. I am definitely an introvert. Also, constant noise and commotion are draining. The thought of people talking to you or talking at you, as is the case in my house sometimes, can be even anxiety inducing to you. I have 3 very chatty girls. My daughters are in 5th grade, 4th grade, and 2nd grade. And I would consider all of them to be extroverts. One of them may be an ambivert. We'll see how she is as she grows, but my 5th grader, she likes both social situations, even extreme social situations, and time to herself. So that kind of, I'm not entirely sure. So the main point of this video, though, is to answer this question: how do you combat all of that to build relationships with your children, teaching multiple grades with multiple personality types and learning styles, and also keep your sanity? So here are some ideas for you. They may not work for you, but these are the things that work for me personally, and I'm hoping that at least one of them will be a starting point for you. Morning time has been a total asset in our home. I start our days off with things that kind of draw everybody in and focus their energy to calm and ground us all and get us ready for our school day. We do read alouds. I have things. I did a whole video about busy boxes. I have things for their hands to do while they're listening to me read, so that it keeps their brains are focused on what I'm reading, but their hands are busy doing something else, so that then they're not fidgety and making a lot of noise trying to talk to each other and ask each other questions. I do have to redirect still some of the time, so it's not a perfect method, but it works for the most part. Another thing that I like to do with morning time is I like to combine a lot of subjects that the kids all are going to do. For instance, history and science are part of our morning time. And also we read aloud together. We do Spanish together, and we practice math facts like multiplication tables, things like that. These are all things that we can do as a group which makes our school days a little bit shorter, which then gives me a little bit of time to kind of refocus myself later in the day before we do things like afternoon activities or dinner time and things like that, where we're all back together again, and it makes it so I wear myself out a little bit less. The things that don't combine well, in case you're wondering, are reading and math. My big kids actually do have reading as a subject that they have the exact same, they're on the same pacing with the exact same books. They do mostly do that separately. If there's a teaching though, then I can do that together with them because they're one grade level apart and really reading on the same reading level. But for instance, I have a second grader who is several grade levels behind the big sisters in her reading level, and that's fine. But I do have to teach her separately. And then of course math, everybody's on their own math schedule, and writing levels too. The kids have their own writing curriculum as well. Another thing that I like to do is make checklists for each child so they're not constantly interrupting me as I'm teaching, to ask what the next thing is. So they have a checklist that has every single subject and every single assignment for each day listed. It does take me a little bit of extra time, but I do find that it definitely helps my sanity when I'm, trying to teach a math lesson to one of them and I don't have the other two constantly interrupting that, making it take longer. Also wearing down my patience, if I'm being really honest, and asking me, what do I do next? So I write everything down in my own planner, and then I print out schedules for them that I have made in PowerPoint of all things. Another thing that I do is I eat lunch on my own. I know that sounds kind of, maybe it makes some of you bristle. I don't know. It is a thing that I need though. So I go into my room with my lunch and I will eat in there. I just spend maybe 15-20 minutes just quietly, or listening to an audiobook, or watching a YouTube video or something like that. But it really recharges my batteries. And if you need to do this, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad about it. You're doing it for yourself, but you're also doing it so that you can continue to give to your family. So really, by blessing yourself, you're also blessing them. Tips, especially if you have like kids, my youngest is 7, and so I feel like I'm at a good point where she can kind of get her own lunch. My big kids will help sometimes with this if she needs like the stovetop or the air fryer or something like that. My 10-year-old is an air fryer genius. She makes all of the food. So I can usually count on the big kids to help her with that if really she needs it. But if they're for some reason being stinkers about that, which, sisters can be, I make sure that they are at least in the process of getting their lunch, and then I'll make mine and go and take my 20-minute break. That's usually a good amount of time, and then I can come back out and we finish school. So we do morning time, lunchtime, and then individual subjects. Usually I'm good to go after about a 20-minute like recharge time. Then when school is over, you can institute a quiet time. Some people have their kids like go do naps. We mostly have reading time. So Charlotte is not at a point where she is reading a lot on her own, but we bought her a Yodo player. So it's a little audio book player that she'll put headphones in and listen to her books, or she'll color quietly, or she'll play something by herself. And the big kids will usually read during this time. I will usually put my AirPods in and go do a chore of some kind, whether it's like cleaning a bathroom or the kitchen, or excuse me, sometimes it's laundry, things like that. When my kids see my AirPods are in my ears, they know that that is mom's quiet time. So they know unless there's a big need for me, then they generally will let me have an hour to myself at that time. But of course, if they need something, then they can tap me on the shoulder. They just know that they need to wait a minute so that I can push pause on whatever it is I'm listening to. So it did, I will say it did take a lot of training to get to this point. We've been working on this since about 2020 when we couldn't leave and we were just all here all the time. We live in a pretty small house, so 5 people constantly in the small house. It can get a little overwhelming or a little noisy or a little chaotic. And unfortunately, I also have like pretty extreme anxiety, and I'll talk about that in a separate video, but this was a necessary thing that I had to think through and work on implementing things over time. So not all of these things happened all at once, but all of them were an important step towards creating the atmosphere that we wanted in our home, which was that of, you know, kindness and charity towards one another, and you know, good together time. Because obviously, like, 5 of us are not going to spend every single minute engaged in each other's presence. So, you know, I just took out chunks of the day where I felt like they didn't need my attention and I needed to have some time to myself. So here are a few other things that I do periodically. So, or they're not like a daily part of my routine. We designated a space that is only for me. I have like a tiny nook that is my craft area, and I'll go in there and I'll either work on school prep stuff by myself, or I'll work on a craft project or an art project or a writing project sometimes by myself. And that's also a totally fine thing for people to do. You know, you don't have to apologize for needing some time to yourself. I, for a while, had a night that I called Introvert Night. And basically, it was when my father, we just a few months ago lost my father-in-law, but before he passed away, he had dementia. And my husband, my father-in-law lived with my brother-in-law's family. So my husband would go at least once a week and help them take care of him, so that my brother-in-law and sister-in-law didn't have to bear the entire burden of that. And he would take the kids over to my brother-in-law's house to go watch Grandpa once a week. And I would have about 3 hours to myself. And I called it Introvert Night. It was my night that I would film, and I would do my video editing and have everything ready to post the next day. Typically, sometimes I would also like watch a show that I wanted to watch that nobody else wants to watch with me, or, you know, do something similar to that. Do a cleaning project that I didn't feel like I could do well with the kids here, or, you know, something like that. So I do kind of miss having that, but it's, you know, it just kind of is what it is right now. We're about to go into rehearsals. Actually, we start tonight. We're going into rehearsals for another show. All 5 of us will be there. I have rehearsal every single night this week. And I'm like, what did I get myself into? Because there's like 30 people in the cast. It's gonna be chaos for a little bit in my life, but the end result is always worth it to me. So read a book. That is another big thing that I like to do. You can obviously read a book by yourself, and that's great. Another thing though is that when it gets crazy in your house, sit your family down and read to them, because that's grounding. It quiets everybody down. Most of the time, I'm going to say that there are some exceptions. I do have some friends who are like, my kids do not like read aloud time, and that's fine. But my kids, and I feel like the majority of kids do like read aloud time. So if you have kids who enjoy reading aloud and you feel like things are getting kind of crazy and you're at the end of your rope and you need some time to like be quiet, get out a book and sit them down. Give them some Play-Doh to play with while you read, and just read a book. Or set up an audiobook. That if you don't want to be the one reading, audiobooks are just as good as reading aloud, because it just calms everybody down. In my limited experience, you can feel free to use screen time strategically. We do in our house. We don't always let them use screens, but we have a couple of apps on a tablet. We have a few shows that we know and trust that they can watch, where they don't need me to be in the room while they're watching them. I do trust my kids to stick with those few things and not like venture out into the greater Netflix or Disney, or they never get on YouTube. I don't let them be on YouTube without me. If your kids do, then that's totally fine. But our decision is that we feel like YouTube isn't really a super safe place, but we have some safe things that we allow them to watch, or do. We have a whole cabinet full of DVDs, things like that. Like, those are all on reserve for days that mom needs them to be able to watch TV. Usually we'll let them each pick a short show on a daily basis, and they can watch those together after their chores are done. But sometimes you need something extra, and that's totally fine. Or if you guys are a TV family, that's also fine. I just know that my kids typically do not do as well with that. I have this Apple Watch, and a lot of times will have to turn it off. I'll take it off of my person and put it away somewhere, or I'll, put it on Do Not Disturb or whatever. I have to put my phone away often, and just say, I need some time that isn't full of other people and their expectations of me. And then lastly, if it comes down to it, I can leave. If it comes down to it, I'll go away from my house I'll schedule a time with a friend who doesn't need a lot of my energy to be with. I do not really like going places on my own, like just by myself. And that's part of an anxiety thing that I have, but, I'll go with somebody who also has the same types of needs as I do, and will be in it, have it be a recharge time rather than an energy taking time. And those are like, honestly, a lot of my like best tips for how to survive homeschool as an introvert. Well, maybe not really how to survive homeschool, but how to thrive in homeschool as an introvert, because I think that that's really where it's at. You gotta figure out how you can thrive doing homeschool. Otherwise, it's gonna be a nightmare for you. I feel like we're finally at the place in our homeschool where I feel like this is exactly where I want to be. We always said you know, we were going to take it year by year and figure out if we wanted to continue homeschooling based on the year. And I think that we're finally at a place where we don't say that anymore. We just are going to homeschool. And I think a lot of that is putting these plans in place for not only how we're going to homeschool, but how we're going to manage our lives and our personalities and our needs with the homeschooling. And so I really, really hope that that every single one of you guys can figure out for yourself what things work for you and how you want your lives as homeschoolers to be. Because I really think that that's really important. If you have other ideas, I would love to hear about them in the comments. Or like if there was a thing that stood out to you from something that I said, I would also love to know if it was encouraging or helpful in any way. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye. Okay, guys, here is my funny thought for this week. We just were out of town for a few days. If you follow me on Instagram, which it's also Homeschool at Heart on Instagram, I showed in my stories like a lot of little clips of our trip to San Diego for he's my uncle, but really like he helped to raise my mother, so he was my grandfather for all intents and purposes. Anyway, we had his memorial service last week. We lost him in October, I believe, and so we waited until there was time for out-of-state people to come to be here for the services. And anyway, so I mentioned earlier in this video that we have a Yodo player, and I will be doing a whole video on the Yodo player. It is really cool. And I want to talk about like all the things that it does, but I have to finish researching all of the things. Anyway, one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to put our read aloud on a card for the Yodo player. You can make your own cards. And you can use books from Audible to do that. So I was like doing this whole thing. I followed all the instructions. You have to get this other program called Open Audible. And then you have to link the accounts, the Open Audible and the Audible account. And I was like following the steps to a T, you guys. And I could not get the thing to link. And it was so frustrating. So then I'm like trying for a whole day. It was a very big time suck. That day did not go as I had planned. I had planned to like make cookies and stuff to take, and I never got to do that because I spent so much time on my computer trying to figure this out. I am not a techie person. So first of all, I mean, I do a reasonably okay job. I can figure some things out. I knew I could figure this thing out, but anyway, so I go to the Yodo community on Facebook to ask how this thing is supposed to work, because clearly I'm not doing it right. And so I'm going on there, I'm like doing this whole thing. There's a checkbox on there. You know, like when you do an internet thing, there's a lot of like, make sure you're not a robot. You click the box, you go in, you put your, password or whatever. So I put my Audible email address and password in, and then I click the box and they're like, oh, hey, can you re-input your password and then also type in this code? So I do that, and then it says my password's wrong. So I check everything. I'm like, this is the right email address, this is the right password, like all of the things are done correctly, and I keep having the same error message over and over and over again. So the Yodo people, the other parents in this Yodo group, are like, yeah, you have to uncheck that box. And I was like, what? There's a box that says, I want to link my Open Audible with my Audible. And of course you think you're supposed to click that box. Why wouldn't you click that box? That is exactly what I want to do. And guys, you're not supposed to click the box. So it made me think of, this is the funny thing. The whole thing was like a comedy of errors, but here we go. The main point of this video is that I'm telling Tim, and all I could think of was that scene in Emperor's New Groove, which if you haven't watched that movie, it's one of my very favorite Disney movies. Go watch it. That scene in The Emperor's New Groove where Kronk pulls the lever and Yzma falls into like the pit of crocodiles, and she's like, that was the wrong lever. And then she's like, why do we even have that lever? Why do we even have that box, you guys? Why do we even have that box? So anyway, it's not super funny, but this is the week that I've had. Anyway, thank you again for watching all the way to the end of this video. I really appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you in the next one.